Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Webinar Talk Show. I'm Tom Singer.
And I'm Liz Green. And Tom, can you believe it? It's March.
No, we're
It's
almost at 1
March.
year. We're almost at 1 year of doing the Webinar Talk Show.
I know, it's crazy. And we may have kind of a fun celebration coming up for our first anniversary, but we are reaching the end of our third season as well. We have claimed the first quarter of this year as Communicate Your Value as our theme. And events for associations, organizations, it is definitely one of the ways that they communicate value. And boy, do we have a good guest today.
Oh, absolutely. And the events world, as we all know, has been hit as hard as any segment of the economy over the past 12 months. And our guest today is actually a repeat guest. She was one of the early people to join us here on the Webinar Talk Show, and that is Cindy Lowe. And Cindy is the CEO of a boutique creative events agency called Red Velvet. And she has worked really hard to survive the last year of the pandemic, but she has also been a thought leader in the world of events and where we are now and where we're going in the future. So we wanted to bring her back to talk about what's going on with events and how can they keep providing value.
Fantastic. Welcome, Cindy. Or welcome
Thank
back.
you. Yeah, thank you for having me back, y'all.
So, Cindy, I know that this has been a really tough year, and you and I both live in Austin, Texas, and you have been really transparent and really vocal about how hard the events industry has been hit and how it's affected Red Velvet. And you have been very clear in sharing the ups and downs of the road the last 11 months. Give us a little bit of background of what you've been through.
Yeah. So it has almost been a year. Can you believe it? March 6th is kind of what I call the D-Day for us, because that was when South by Southwest, which is a huge event in Austin, was officially canceled by our city last year. In that short, almost 12 months, we have not only pivoted, I know that awful word, everyone's like, ooh, we have expanded our digital offerings 100%, probably even 200% if I really measure it, because we had some clients that were willing to let us go along for the ride and help them pivot their in-person events that they were scheduled to have in Austin or elsewhere. And we moved it to virtual right away. Then there were some that were still figuring it out, and they reached out to us maybe a few months later because we were doing virtual already and asking us, can you help us? And we were just navigating everything, teaching ourselves. I couldn't be more proud of the team because it has been like getting an MBA in a 12-month period while also, doing and producing the events at the same time. So we were teaching, learning, and doing at all at once. And what the thing I love about it is that what we came out of this is we have 100% new skills. I mean, if you had asked me before, are you a TV producer? No. But guess what? I am on my way, and so is our team.
So, Cindy, how long has Red Velvet been around? And you started off kind of doing weddings and other types of events, and you grew into this massive, boutique creative agency for corporate and other large scale events. So what was the transition that you've made over the last few years, going back before the pandemic?
Yeah. So we are 18 years old, believe it or not.
Wow.
And yeah, when we started out, I took on any events because since I didn't have a reputation yet in the events industry, since I even pivoted from tech. So I wasn't even in the industry prior to 2002. So I had to take on any and every event to kind of show my reputation. So from nonprofit galas to weddings, to social events, to corporate meetings. But then what really stuck with me is I personally enjoyed the challenge of corporate events, corporate meetings, and also incentive trips. So that is where I kind of stuck, and we stopped doing weddings. And then slowly we also even stopped doing really social parties unless they were high-end social parties. And that has been kind of our focus for the last decade. As far as, where we're going now, I do think virtual will stick around, but we are very excited to be planning some in-person for later this fall. So knock on wood that anything should change to prevent that from happening.
Well, we kind of asked you to bring your crystal ball here today and talk about where we're going. And I have to imagine your background in tech has been pretty beneficial over the last year. there's a lot of talk about the future of meetings. Where are we going to go? Are we going to be back in person, or is it going to be hybrid?
Yep.
You said when we were getting ready to go on air, you have a theory about this.
I do.
Are you ready to share?
I am. So listen up. So first and foremost, as far as in-person meetings, yes. Are we going to have a comeback? Absolutely. The demand is there. What unfortunately is working against us is the fear. I mean, think about it. It's a virus. You can't see it. And so people are very fearful of getting sick. And that's a very valid fear. However, we now have so much more data in the last 12 months. And that's what I would empower people is use that data, like real data, not news outlets, not use actual science studies, and look at the data and figure out, are you okay with being in that environment in person? Okay. So that is number one. Second is hybrid has been a buzzword since I would say last September. So I had been already sitting there with our team, with our partners, trying to figure out what exactly is hybrid mean? Like, can we do this? And this revelation came to me, honestly, in the last 30 days. And I realized mainly because a lot of our clients had asked us to put together a budget and give them an idea of what it would cost to do hybrid later this year. And what I'm realizing is, think about in 2020 in the US, okay? The only industry that really had in-person events, okay? Not even festivals, not even concerts. The only industry was the sports industry. And you want to know why? Because they're willing to spend the money. The sponsors were willing to spend the money, and the owners. So now let's take that to the corporate market, which is where I'm at. Right now, anytime we propose a budget, we look at it and they're like, oh, that's a lot of money. And it's because we're planning 2 events. We are planning a hybrid, and then, we're planning 100% digital, and we're planning an in-person. That is 2 events. And right now, the CEOs, CFOs, controllers, they're having a hard time justifying that cost. And I get it. So until we get over that hump and are willing to spend that kind of money, I think what's going to happen is that anything that's like low cost and also low on ROI, such as training sessions, maybe even initial sales intakes, those are going to remain virtual. It's just cheaper, easier, and they don't have to get on a plane. But those that have high ROI, like sales meetings, user conferences, those are going to come back with the vengeance. And it's a matter of which state you're in right now in the US and whether or not you're allowed to host. Because I have spoken to my friends in Florida. They are hosting conferences every week. It's again a matter of, is your state okay with it? And they're doing it safely. And that's what I think we should talk about, because of course in the news, it's so easy to talk about it being a super spreader, but we're not if you're hiring a professional, they don't want to be a super spreader event. Who wants that? No one wants that. So that's why I was like, I wish the media would talk about all the safe live events that have happened. Even the inauguration, that has been 100% safe. There has been no cases coming from that. And that was a great example of like, we can do this, guys. We just need to spend the right time and the effort and be willing to come as a community to do it together safely.
So Cindy, you bring up an interesting point, and that is you're planning 2 separate events, and that impacts your budget, but it also impacts things like who's going to be the master of ceremonies, what content is going to be given to which audience. Because I've talked to a client and I said, you don't have to give 100% of the content to both audiences.
Right.
There is a huge overlap, the main stage, certain breakouts, but during the live coffee break, that's when you can do interviews with sponsors and speakers and VIPs. People live on your site could come watch it, but it doesn't have to be part of the agenda.
Exactly.
They can have their coffee break. And people, they're like, but if we don't give everybody the same thing, they're not going to be happy. And I'm like, no, they're 2 different audiences. They have different wants. So is that what you're seeing?
I am totally saying that. And also remember, when we pivoted to virtual, we were telling our clients, please do not translate your in-person event one-to-one, because it doesn't work that way. You have to think of it with your TV hat on. So ask yourself, what kept me engaged? So when you watch an award ceremony online, or when you watch a sporting event online, what is it that you're looking for? Because again, when you're in person at a Super Bowl, let's use the football analogy, you know it's going to be a different experience than watching it at home with your friends in the audience, okay, and in the house. So it's the same thing. And that I agree with you. I don't think you have to create the exact same, but what you do need to get is address the needs and wants of a human. And when I'm online, I want to be seen and heard. So if in fact it's like 1,000+ people in that chat room, I want to be able to go off to a smaller chat room and actually talk to people and meet Tom and meet Eliz. And one of the things that I love is that right now AI has really gotten good, and there are a lot more what I call the blind networking. And I have really appreciated the groups that have tried to do where they randomly match you up and go, hey, I noticed that you don't know Tom. Would y'all like to meet for 5 minutes? We're going to give you some prompting questions so you can kick it off. And then if you want to stay in touch, it's up to you on connecting on LinkedIn or connect on our own platform. I love that. I think more of anyone hosting big conferences needs to be doing that, because that is why Clubhouse has taken off. People are dying to meet new people, and they don't want to work hard at it, if that makes sense. And it's not that we're lazy, it's just that we have a lot coming at us. And so if we can let AI and technology do that for us, oh my gosh, it's a winning combination.
So I attended an event this weekend that was put on by the National Speakers Association, and it was their first attempt at a hybrid event. So they had about 50 people in the live audience and then several hundred on the live stream virtual audience. And one of the things that was pointed out after the first day was those of us in the audience could join the chat room. You could log on your phone and participate in the chat room. That hadn't even crossed my mind. So I turned down my speaker. I logged on to the live stream. And so both the live audience and the virtual audience were able to chat together. And I don't think that was necessarily planned, but people liked it but they liked to be able to chat with the people in the room. And the people in the room like to be able to chat with the people who are virtual.
Right.
Yeah. And I think right now there's so much curiosity. So like I saw another meeting, it was not ours, but it was a client of ours. She just had one that too was what I would call semi-hybrid. They were in a room and I don't think they had any audience members there, but they had their team all there and they were chatting back and forth, and people just want to know, so what's it like? And, and are y'all wearing masks? Are y'all physically distanced? Are meals separated? Are they buffet? And they're just curious. And again, the more we normalize things, the better and the sooner we'll hopefully recover from this. And right now we need to, because what's scary to me is to see how many people are just still sitting and waiting. And if I could make one plea to corporate, if y'all are listening, is that it's up to us. Like, corporate is going to be the one to decide how fast our industry is going to recover, because they are the ones that control really a lot of the money that comes from the top down to all of us. And so if they are not willing to spend and invest in live events again, or even hybrid events, it's going to take a really long time for us to recover.
I think that's so true. And I want to go back to something you said, that you need to think with your TV hat on. I love that. And for a long time, Tom and I have been talking about treating events like television shows. I mean, we think it should be like a talk show, because that's what we do. I know Tom has talked about this. I've had this experience as well, where we may be working with a client and they say, well, we already have an in-person MC. Can't they just handle the virtual audience too? Can't they just take that all together?
Yeah.
What do you think?
They might have a unicorn, but I haven't met one yet that can do both. Because we did a smaller event for about 100 people, last year, I think it was August. And we literally had someone in the chat room. Then we had someone that was on the actual show, broadcast. And then we even had someone on the back end in case they were emailing us, because we were worried that maybe they were tweeting or emailing us and we didn't see it. So think about it, that was 3 for a group of 100. So can you imagine if you're trying to attract thousands? You need to hire more eyes and ears, because again, virtual is very different, and you can't predict what's going to go wrong. And there is going to be something that's going to go wrong, because every one of us has a different computer system set up. Yes. And that is the hard part, is that, you all of a sudden now need to be a techie and be able to fix all that. So I think people underestimate, because technology has improved a lot. I mean, it just works. When it works great. But when it doesn't, oh my gosh, you need to have patience.
So Eliz and I have been working as a team as MCs for 7 years. So we came up with this idea that hybrid events were going to be hot 7 years ago, and that you needed to
Yeah.
have sort of that TV talk show theme going on for the broadcast. It never really took off, but when the pandemic hit, we came back and we started this webinar talk show. And she and I had the honor to MC several events together this year. One was
Nice.
like 3 months worth of events leading up to the National Speakers Association's
Right.
summer conference that they call Influence. And then the National Speakers Association just did this event this weekend that was hybrid, and they had two other people serving as their MCs, but having a team allowed them to be together on stage, together virtually, or each taking one side, depending on what was going on in the conference. So they had a team of people doing it, which was awesome. And one of the people on the staff said to me, what we learned this year is you can't do a virtual event without a dedicated MC. They said we would never
Thank
do
you.
that ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. And besides, you want someone, again, to keep you on track. And if you don't have a strong personality to do that, you're going to lose the attention. Again, I have seen so many, I've probably attended at least a couple hundred virtuals, and it's been so bad when they don't have someone keeping people on track, you know?
Yep.
And and it's about over communicating and setting expectations, because there was so much that all of us had to learn. And all we knew, again, was what we knew maybe a little bit on Zoom and what we knew of watching on TV. And so that's why it was such an adjustment. But the fact that even my parents, okay, are now what I wouldn't say Zoom experts, but they are definitely comfortable with it. It tells me that we have come a long way. If this is like a skill, think about the first time you had to use your smartphone, right? And we all had to learn new protocols and new processes, right? And the first time we got email, like when was it appropriate to forward emails, like, you know, those forwarded emails, that kind of stuff. So it's like, and when is it appropriate to reply all? So
Right.
we just used last year to create and figure out what are these normal protocols for virtual engagements. And I do hope it's going to continue to improve. We're going to see it stay. It's definitely staying, like I said, for training, anything that used to require someone to fly. And it was kind of almost a little bit of an expense. I think that's what virtual is replacing. But as far as in-person conferences, oh my gosh, you can't replace those. And that's why I do hope that people have been saving up money, because I do worry that corporate has still not let go of that budget line item to let them go travel. And that worries me.
Well, that brings to mind something, though, that Tom and I are seeing is in virtual, I think there was a hesitancy for our sponsors or vendors, things like that,
Oh, interesting.
because they didn't know what they were going to get, right? They
Got
know
it.
what
Got it.
they know what it looks
Yeah.
like in person.
Yeah.
You're going to have a booth, and some places
Yeah.
that's really fancy. Sometimes it's just a table and a sign. But whatever it is, they know what that experience is like.
Yeah.
Putting on the TV hat again, which I'm in full support of, and going back to your talk about the Super Bowl, one of the things that the virtual audience gets that the in-person audience doesn't get are commercials.
Correct.
And people look forward to those commercials.
Correct.
The same thing works in a hybrid or virtual event. And I've produced several in the last 3 weeks that we had 30 and 60-second commercials that were played in between segments, and even interviews with sponsors going a little bit deeper, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not very long. The feedback that I got, and then we also did lunch breakouts that they hosted.
Oh, nice.
So that combination, the feedback is they're getting more FaceTime in a virtual environment that they get in person.
And
So
I would
putting on our
challenge
TV hats, could really be beneficial.
And I would challenge this a bit, because one of the things that I have been telling sponsors, and funny thing is, I'm actually writing a blog post that's, I think, coming out later this week about it, because what we found was in 2020, the reason why there were still some sponsors is because they were okay with letting their hosts keep the money, right? But then maybe have as great of an experience. And again, going back to, we all had to learn how to network and how to sell online.
Right.
And unfortunately, there was some big learning curves. And so what I am trying to encourage those that are sponsors of events is to rethink it. And actually, like you said, Elise, is that you can actually get bigger numbers if you do it right. You've got to find the ones that have share the same audience with you, and you have to work the room. You can't expect them just to walk by virtually and then you can grab them because you can't see them.
Right.
But for the first time ever, we actually have real metrics that tell us, oh, Cindy Lowe stayed online and actually attended your session for all of the entire time. So that tells me there is interest. And that, for me, those metrics are huge, because in the past, unless you invested in RFID at an in-person event, I could tell you how many people were in the room, but could I really tell you how many were really listening to the talk and how many were engaged? Not as well. And so the digital does provide better metrics. And I will say, I know it's scary to invest money into these virtual events, but to your point of the commercial shoot, this is your chance to actually take a sponsorship and be a little bit more unique and creative, because it's not another pin. It's not another, hey, tchotchke in the bag. I can actually maybe make a request from my host and say, I would love to do an intro, and it would be fun if I could maybe do it in a comedic fashion, or maybe can I do it in such a way where I can do a follow-up email and includes a little bit message from us. It's like, there's so many new ways, and I challenge people to use it as your opportunity to kind of set the tone of what your company culture is and why you're different from your competitors, because guess what? You're probably not the only sponsor of that event. So you want to stand out.
Well, and you bring up something really interesting, and that is you have to be creative in this new world. And obviously you run a creative agency, so you understand this. But one of the things I did with one client is we did interviews recorded of their sponsors that were played during the breaks.
Oh, I love that.
We made them so that they were also, they talked about the event, but they weren't about the event. They were about the industry that the sponsor was supporting.
I like it.
And a couple of those sponsors actually have those videos now on their websites. So
that's
you can
great.
get creative.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And make it a sponsor benefit by the fact that they're being interviewed.
Because then now you got a finished product. I love that. And also, don't forget the power of social media, because I know that not everything you're going to do is going to go viral, but the fact of the matter is if people are looking for new content and fresh ideas. So if you could share a nugget and show people why you are the expert in that area, they're going to remember you for that. And they're going to hopefully share it too and go, hey, check this out. What he or she just said, that's what I mean. And so every time I find something that inspires me, like this morning, actually, after our internal meeting and before this, I decided to go tune into my Lions Camp. I always never pronounce right. Lions Camp. They're doing their virtual again. It usually is in person in France. And I was so inspired by listening to some of these executives talking about what they saw in the future of marketing and brands. And again, was it necessarily tied to events? No, but it got me thinking from an event perspective, like, oh, if the marketers are thinking this way, I bet you this is what they're going to try to do next. So it's like, expose yourself to as much as you can. And for the first time ever, we can. YouTube, Twitch, Clubhouse, there's so much out there. Saying that you don't know the information, it would be a lame excuse given this pandemic, I will say.
And I love this idea of integrating all of those things. You just named just a few of the tools that are out there. This meeting I was at this weekend, one of the things they scheduled into the agenda was a Clubhouse recap for both people who were live, people who were remote, and anyone else who wanted to hear about the best things learned at the event. And they had myself and a couple of other people who were experienced on Clubhouse moderate it. And then we talked to the MCs and the speakers and the attendees, both virtually and in person. And then some people came into the room who were meeting planners or speakers or whatever.
And they may not have known.
And everyone shared. And in a way, it promotes the event because you've gone outside of your own ecosystem.
Smart.
And that's the key, because every time I go back to, like, what's our end goal of this? And the goal always is, I call it new eyeballs. I want new people to know of us, know of our client's mission, et cetera. And so you just said it. I mean, Tom, and we've been calling them Clubhouse after parties, but I like that. It's like the post-con of the event.
Yep.
And I will say, so I wrote a blog post too about Clubhouse, since Clubhouse is right now only open to iPhone users. I am curious to see if Twitter Spaces will take off, because I feel bad for those that are Android and can't join in the conversation. You know, it limits the number of
Yeah.
people.
Yes. Yes.
It does. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Our time went so fast today. Unbelievable.
So
Cindy,
hopefully it was helpful.
It was,
oh no,
definitely.
This was an awesome conversation, and this is why Eliz and I believe that interviews can be better than a talking head over PowerPoint, because you get so many more ideas when people are just sharing off the cuff. So Cindy, if somebody who's watching this and they're like, I have to know more about Cindy Lowe, I have to know about this, boutique creative agency, Red Velvet, how do they find you?
So the easiest way first is if you're on Instagram, my personal handle is Cindy Wears Red. Yes, after the company. I always try to wear a hint of red. But on our company website, it's www.redvelvetevents.com. And we're all over social media. So if you connect with us, find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Clubhouse, I'm always happy to help, because I do feel right now it's so important for us to support our own industry, because I do fear when we finally can get to the other side of this is that not many of us will be around. I mean, I haven't shared this with too many people until now, but right now we just don't have, like, the reason why we keep getting the leads is because we're around, and unfortunately they can't find our competitors. And it makes me sad, because that's not how we want to win. I'm a competitive person, mind you, but that's not how I want to win the game. I want to win it because of quality, and ideas and creative ideas. I don't want to win it because I can't find other people.
Right.
So,
exactly.
So we're here, we're busy, and we would love to work with corporate brands that truly value engagement, whether that be virtual, hybrid, or live. And we might be challenging you on that hybrid, because again, a lot of them are scared and sticker shocked when they see the hybrid price tag. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Cindy, thank you for joining us here, and thank you for being a leader in the events business and being so helpful and also so transparent during this crazy year for all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for both having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this is good. I'm thinking we may ask you back again. Just be prepared.
Let's do it. Hopefully in a couple months when we're all out of this, right?
Yes, that would be nice.
We'll look back. We'll do a recap.
Yeah, hopefully our theme for the next quarter will be something about, like, what's next, because it's time to move forward, right?
I am ready.
I think we all are. Thank you so much for joining us, Cindy. Tom, we're going to be back on Wednesday talking about that event that you went to this weekend with Rhett Bauman. He is the Chief Revenue Officer for the National Speakers Association. He's coming to talk not only about what worked and how that event was structured, but also really looking at why events are important to the revenue of associations. So that's going to be great. If you wanted to find out how to find that, you go to webinartalkshow.live. That's where you'll find us on Facebook. And Tom, where would they find us if they wanted information about what we do?
Well, if you want information about having Eliz and or I host and help run your event and make it more engaging, you can find us at webinartalkshow.com.
That's right. Cindy, we want to thank you so much for being with us today again. We look forward to when you come back and join us again. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, y'all.